One of the great Sufi teachers of the past, Dervish Nizamuddin, was an object of amazement for some and of envy for others. All who have felt a moment of exaltation believe it possible to be touched by the divine spirit and succeed in overcoming selfishness, deceit, and falsehood. They find it easy to accept that love and giving are rewards in themselves, without the expectation of anything in return. Nizamuddin's enemies finally accused him of heresy before the court of the Sultan of Delhi. His offense, they said, had been the singing and dancing enjoyed by his followers. They accused him of insulting God himself by bringing music into the mosque. The Sultan called upon Nizamuddin to refute the charges, but he instead accepted all the blame. Music, he said, is the declaration of the presence of God within me, and I express that joy of that presence in the dance. If this, then, is a sin, then indeed I am guilty. The wise Sultan absolved Nizamuddin of his crime and allowed his followers the freedom to glorify God through music and dance. This ancient parable of the accused dervish has actually never died. In their exclusivity, the Taliban government in Afghanistan declared music as unholy and all musicians as outlaws. To preserve their craft, the exiled musicians crossed over the border into Pakistan's frontier city of Peshawar and established music lodges where they keep alive their ancient Afghani identity.
اینطور است که من نمیفهم که از کجا شروع کنم و از کجا براتون بگویم، از کدام درد بنالم.
I do not know actually where to begin, and of which sorrow I should speak. From the sorrow of exile, or the sorrow of homelessness, or separation from my brotherhood, or separation from my bread and water, or sorrow for my tradition or my culture. All these sorrows I have mentioned. From where shall I start? Some cities are cursed by their own beauty, others because of their geographical location. The city of Peshawar originated next to the narrow pass through which Central Asia joins with the south. A place so important that no conqueror ever needed an excuse to invade it. The history of Peshawar is the history of swinging between extremes, from stability to chaos, peacefulness to aggression. Among the inhabitants of Peshawar, this unending struggle has created a cult of self-protection and of reliance on weapons. To the children who grow up in an environment like this, weapons become as normal an occurrence as books. In their adult lives, practical wisdom and weapons will be equally valued. The Soviet aggression at the end of the 1970s unleashed a wave of refugees who sought safe haven in neighboring Pakistan. At the beginning of the war, trains were still plying here. The tracks were built by imperial forces, which once fought for power in Afghanistan. Soon enough, trains brought foreign troops into Afghanistan and transported the first refugees out as a direct consequence of the previous transport of soldiers. The people of Afghanistan suffered their exile with dignity, either by not talking about their predicament or by mocking at it. More than 20 years have passed since that first wave of refugees fled the Soviet aggression. The images remained more or less the same. The only change is in the colors of the troops that are creating the present-day refugees. In fact, many of the Taliban rulers in Afghanistan have been born in these very camps. Without any hope or education, the only reality they encountered was misery and the prospect of the survival of the fittest. In their first years of manhood, they returned to Afghanistan, eager to fight the conqueror that was no longer there. He had already retreated from Afghanistan, humbled and without any awareness of what he had been doing there in the first place. The anger of the young warriors was thus turned towards those whom they still found in their homeland and who did not share the same twisted view about good and evil, religion and life. Hence, music became the pastime of infidels. Overnight, the musicians were branded as the enemies of the faith. The artists were faced with a difficult choice. Renounce their music or take it with them into exile. They left for Peshawar with a sense of heartache. The jokes and songs with their irony from the time of the first refugees have now become songs full of sorrow and nostalgia.
دازمون زیبا وطن دازمون لیلا وطن ماشک ما به خاطر از این اومده که
Dazimun Zeba Watan, Dazimun Laila Watan. And the tears come to my eyes not because I'm afraid and do not have anything. That is not the reason. The tears come because of the rivers and streams that are dry or destroyed, and the green forests, gardens and vineyards that are destroyed and leveled to the ground. The good breeding and culture that have been trodden upon, the beautiful houses and resorts that are no more.
و هیچ مرجعی نیست. میره به صراحت میگم که ما را در این حالت دفاع بکنه.
From the gardens of its homeland, an important segment of the music scene of Kabul has moved to Peshawar, settling in a quarter that has been housing Afghani refugees for a long time. It seems as though a tiny replica of Kabul has sprung up in this part of Peshawar. Merchants, craftsmen and common laborers create a very similar social structure among the Afghani society in exile. But the exiled musicians of Afghanistan have not given in to self-pity and bitterness. Since the Taliban not only banned music but also ordered the burning of all musical instruments, it became their task to replace the instruments that were destroyed in Afghanistan. The craftsmen of yesterday have thus become the guardians of a culture that is in danger of extinction and has been outlawed in the very place of its origin. Armed with newly built instruments, the exiled masters of the Rubab have thus rented a whole building where they gather. The different styles of Rubab playing are being preserved in its numerous rooms. The teaching that is followed by the musicians is the path of Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, Sufi mystic and spiritual leader of many artists. Khwaja Chishti called music God's blessing and used music as a form of prayer. Many years later, the Afghani poet Badal wrote, "My hidden informer revealed a secret the western wind whispered in my ear. The spirit entered into the body of man only when the breast started to echo with music." For a true master, music is prayer. Without music, these artists would be in the same hopeless state as those who sent them into exile, taking away from them the right to be that which they are. They would be bound to become imitators of the ways of their persecutors. These craftsmen have done so much. Even though Ustad Muhammad Umar is no more, there is the young Ustad Himayan amongst us, who plays the Rubab. Ustad Hashim has passed away, but there is a young Ustad here who has taken his place. And if, God forbid, these individuals are not here, then the tabla and the Rubab would lie buried with the old masters. As absurd as it may seem, the roots of the sorrows of which the Afghani musicians are singing are common to them as well as to their persecutors, the Taliban. Like many other inhabitants of Central Asia, the Talibans were witnessing the extinction of their own cultural tradition, and which is disintegrating under the influence of the media, global idioms, and the domination by Western cultural patterns. Islam, especially, is based on concern for one's fellow man or communal solidarity. Spirituality and a slow and contemplative pace of life, and the modern world simply does not have time for such priorities. And the Talibans have chosen to shut down all the bridges that connect with the rest of the world, and with the mainstream of their own society, for that matter. In a tragic way, they have perverted the efforts and the need for protecting their own values into a system devoid of mercy and compassion. The two basic premises upon which Islam was built. These scenes are from former Peshawar. The Peshawar of today is just a pale reflection of the yesterdays. The tea houses are still there. Passers-by flutter about in their swaying shalwar kameez garments. Impressive bearded faces under green turbans are still to be seen. But although the clothes and facades are still Eastern, the fast rhythm of life is a sure sign of the gradual change of once traditional society into a modern one that exudes suspicion and fear. The market doctrine, which is the foundation of Western society, is not a philosophy that can be content in its own backyard. The market must grow, hence its constant need for new markets to feed on. This is the world of tradition, the world that was believed to be unalterable and thus eternal. And therefore, the changes here are extremely painful and sometimes provoke overreactions. In these circumstances, many Afghanis simply despair without even trying to snap into reality. Some are undertaking simple business activities in the hope that they will provide a means of survival and also a place in the new environment they are confined to now. The musicians of Afghanistan in Peshawar are perhaps the best answer both to exile and the dislocation of the modern age. The education they have received and their tradition of urban life has enabled them to live in hope rather than hate. It has taught them not to seek comfort in despair, but in the joy of music. These are the very same virtues their persecutors could not find or nurture in themselves. As you can see, the heart that beats is also a musical instrument, an instrument so fine with exact rhythm that if it were to falter in its music, it would die. Have you ever tried to place your ear on the heart? It sounds like tuck, 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 tuck. I am no religious scholar or even a scholar of music, but as much I know, that I have told you. There is nothing more to tell. Music has no bounds. Ustad Humayun is probably the greatest master of Rubab in this community. He has based his style on the rich Afghani musical tradition, applying it at the same time to Western music idioms. His balanced and intriguing music is both a path and a pattern that offers a reasonable answer to many of the challenges of modern times.